At 2:30 in the morning on Chicago's South Side, my Uber driver, a brother named Ryland with a fresh fade, locked every door and whispered, "Don't move, sis." I thought he was the threat until he said, "That Escalade behind us? That's Dax Marorrow. He been following young black women for months." My hand started shaking. "How you know my name?" Ryland's eyes stayed locked on the rearview mirror, his jaw tight, knuckles the color of bronze wrapped around that steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping us alive. The Escalade behind us had no headlights, just a dark shadow rolling closer, and my stomach dropped so hard I tasted metal in my mouth. I pressed my back against the seat, silk bonnet sliding against the leather, and tried to breathe through the panic squeezing my chest. This couldn't be real. I just left Zara's crib in Bronzeville after studying all night for my morning exam, tired as hell and thinking about nothing but my bed. Now I'm trapped in a car with a stranger telling me another stranger been hunting me. The scent of black ice air freshener and my own fear mixed together, making everything feel thick and wrong. Ryland's voice cut through again, steady but urgent. "Imani, I need you to trust me right now. We finna get you somewhere safe, but you gotta stay calm." He knew my whole government name, and I ain't even tell him nothing but the address. But to understand how I ended up locked in this car with death riding my bumper, we gotta rewind 8 hours earlier when my biggest problem was whether Professor Hamilton was gonna accept my thesis proposal late. I was Imani Thompson, 25 years old, graduate student at University of Chicago studying social work, and I had my whole life mapped out neat and clean. My mama Diane raised me and my brother Elijah in Englewood after our daddy left, working double shifts at Cook County Hospital so we could have better. She taught me to speak proper when I needed to trust my gut, and to always keep my edges laid because you never know who watching. That morning I presented my research on trauma-informed care to a room full of white professors who kept asking if my personal proximity to the subject matter would bias my findings, and I'd code switch so smooth they had no choice but to approve my proposal. Walking out that conference room I felt untouchable, smart, safe. I had my silk press bouncing, my mama's gold hoops in my ears, and a text from Elijah saying he was proud of me. The day was mine. But by the time I got to Zara's apartment in Bronzeville that night to study, Elijah's car was in the shop and Mama was pulling another overnight. When midnight rolled into 1, then 2, I was exhausted, ready to go home, and didn't think twice about ordering that Uber. I stepped outside into the January cold, bonnet on my head, joggers and a Howard hoodie, scrolling through my phone to check the driver's plate. I ain't see the Escalade parked 3 cars down, engine running, watching. Ryland pulled up in a clean black Camry, and when I got in he greeted me with, "Good morning sis," or "Good night," however you want to see it, and his voice had that tired but friendly tone that made me relax. He looked to be late 30s, fresh fade sharp enough to cut, wearing a simple black hoodie, and had this calm energy that put me at ease. We started talking about my exam, his night shift, how cold Chicago gets in January, and I found myself actually laughing about Professor Hamilton's shocked face when I quoted 3 sources he ain't even know existed. Ryland said, "Sound like you handle your business," and I felt seen in a way that made the ride comfortable. But about 5 minutes in, something shifted. His shoulders tensed up. His eyes kept flicking to the rear view. At first I thought he was just being careful, watching traffic, but the way his jaw clenched told me different. The conversation died. The warmth in the car turned cold. I sat up straighter and asked if everything was good, but he didn't answer right away, and that silence made my heartbeat pick up. That's when I noticed it too. A dark shape in the mirror, no headlights, staying exactly 3 car lengths behind us on a street that should have been empty. My mama always said, "Baby, if your spirit tell you something wrong, believe it the first time." My spirit was screaming. Ryland's breathing changed, got slower, more controlled, like he was preparing for something. Then he hit that lock button, and the sound of all 4 doors securing at once made every nerve in my body light up. When I demanded to know what was happening, that's when he said the name. Dax Marorrow. He told me he used to work private security in Atlanta, protecting women at a domestic violence shelter, and Dax had stalked one of their clients before disappearing. I recognized that Escalade, Ryland said, voice tight. He upgraded his operation. Moved to Chicago about 8 months ago. Police been trying to find him, but he good at disappearing. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold my phone. I asked why this man would be following me, And Ryland's answer made my blood turn to ice. Because you was walking out that building alone. That's all it take for men like him. I wanted to scream to jump out the car to call Elijah, but Ryland told me not to move too much or make calls because Dax would know we knew. The Escalade crept closer, drifting into the left lane, then back to the right, like it was playing with us. I could feel the presence of whoever was inside pressing against my spine. Ryland adjusted his speed, trying to keep distance, but the car matched us every time. The streets around us were empty, just flickering streetlights and closed storefronts, and I realized how vulnerable we were out here. That's when Ryland said, I triggered the Uber emergency alert. Police know where we are, but we gotta stay in motion till they get here. The words gave me a sliver of hope, but fear still had me in a chokehold. Up ahead I spotted a Texaco station glowing like a beacon, and I pointed, voice cracking. Go there. Cameras. People. Ryland nodded. Hold on tight, sis. The Escalade wasn't playing no more. It surged forward, and I watched in the side mirror as it pulled up beside us, close enough that I could see the tinted windows and feel the weight of whoever was inside watching me. Ryland's hands tightened on the wheel and he said, He finna try to box us in. My breath caught. The Escalade jerked toward us, and Ryland had to swerve right to avoid getting hit. My whole body slammed against the door, and I let out a sound I ain't never made before, pure terror. The gas station was right there, maybe 200 feet away, but Dax wasn't letting us reach it easy. He swerved again, more aggressive this time, trying to force us toward the curb. Metal almost scraped metal. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears, louder than the engine, louder than Ryland's voice telling me to stay down. Everything moved in slow motion and fast motion at the same time. I saw my life flash. Mama's face when she came home tired from her shifts, Elijah teaching me to parallel park, Sunday dinners with lorries on everything, the smell of Fabuloso and gospel music on Saturday mornings. All of it threatened to be ripped away by a man I ain't even know existed 10 minutes ago. Ryland made his move. He gunned it straight for the Texaco entrance, tires screaming, and cut the wheel so sharp I thought we'd flip. The Escalade tried to follow, but the angle was wrong and the pavement near the entrance was slick from a cleaning. I heard the crash before I saw it. Metal slamming into concrete, glass shattering, the sound echoing across the empty lot like a gunshot. The Escalade hit the barrier on the side of the building, and the impact shook the ground. Ryland threw the car into park near the front door, and his voice was urgent when he said, Go now. I shoved the door open with shaking hands, stumbled out, and ran toward the entrance where a young brother in a Texaco uniform was already stepping outside, phone in his hand. I screamed for help, my voice breaking, and he immediately started dialing 911. Ryland got out and positioned himself between me and the wrecked Escalade, ready to block whatever came next. The driver's door opened. Dax stepped out, and for the first time, I saw him clearly under the fluorescent lights. He was younger than I expected, maybe mid-30s, light-skinned with a neat beard, wearing dark clothes that made him blend into the night. He looked so normal, so calm. That's what scared me most. How unbothered he seemed, like following women and trying to run them off the road was just another Tuesday. He glanced around, saw the cameras, saw the attendant on the phone, saw Ryland blocking his path to me, and then he ran. Disappeared around the back of the building like a roach when the lights come on. Within 3 minutes, a patrol car screeched into the lot, lights flashing red and blue across everything. 2 officers jumped out and went around the building, flashlights cutting through the darkness, and I heard shouting from the back. Get on the ground. Hands behind your head. When they brought Dax out in handcuffs, he looked right at me with this cold smile and said, You was supposed to be easy. My stomach dropped. The officer asked if I knew him and I could barely whisper. No, but he knew where I'd be. That's when everything clicked. Dax had been watching me, studying my routine, waiting for the perfect night when I'd be alone and vulnerable. The thought made my skin crawl, made me want to scrub myself clean of the feeling of being hunted. Ryland stepped closer and told the officers everything. How he recognized Dax from Atlanta, how the man had a history, how he triggered the emergency alert. The officers took our statements, impounded the Escalade, and one of them told me I was lucky Ryland had been paying attention. Lucky. That word sat wrong in my chest because luck shouldn't be what keeps black women alive. But I wasn't done. 3 days later, after Mama and Elijah had barely let me out of their sight, I did what I do best, I researched. I used my academic access to pull public records, cross-referenced Dax's arrest history, and found patterns the police missed. He'd been in Detroit, Cleveland, and Atlanta before Chicago, always targeting young black women near college campuses, always disappearing before charges stuck. I compiled everything into a 15-page report with maps, timelines, and victim testimonies I found through social work networks, then walked it straight to the detective handling my case. She looked at me like I'd handed her gold. "Ms. Thompson, this is incredible work. How did you?" I cut her off. "Because I'm the one who almost didn't make it home. And I'm making sure every other sister he targeted gets justice too." My report helped connect Dax to 8 other women across 4 cities. His 8-year sentence turned into 23. 2 months later, I stood in Mama's kitchen while she fried fish and played Shirley Caesar, and I felt the weight finally lift. Elijah had fixed his car, Mama had switched to day shifts, and I'd partnered with a local organization to teach young black women about digital safety and trusting their intuition. The scar from that night would always be there, sitting quiet in my chest whenever I got into a car alone. But I'd turned my trauma into armor, my fear into purpose, and every time I taught another sister to listen when her spirit said run, I knew Dax hadn't won. He tried to make me a statistic, but I made him a case study instead. If this story hit you where it counts, make sure you subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from. Let's show the world how far this message reaches. Sometimes we carry things in silence, but when we speak up, we give someone else the permission to breathe again. We're here to help each other survive the struggle and come out stronger on the other side. So keep your eyes open, trust your soul, and remember that every small step you take is building your legacy. Keep it real out there.